Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today, and I'm having a look at Yamaha's MT-03 because this is the 2020 model. It has been updated. It's received a number of pretty nice updates, I would say, and they've brought it in line with the Yamaha R3 and they've made it an even better machine than ever before. And my first impression of the bike was that perhaps they'd just thrown the suspension from the R3 onto this particular machine and given us a sportier, but also at times harsher suspension setup, particularly for the day-to-day riding, which obviously a machine like this is going to be suited to. However, as it turned out, that was not true at all. This has got a really beautiful suspension setup, which I think is quite different to the R3. I think there's a lot more suppleness to it. There's a more forgiving rear end particularly, which makes it a much nicer everyday ride when you're riding around, you know, the potholed kind of city streets and things like that. And combined with the overall naked bike package makes for a really fun machine. One of the first things I noticed jumping on this bike was the fact the seat height is so low, and of course you really feel like you're in the bike rather than sitting just on top of it. And you can see the new tank definitely contributes to that because it's wider at the top, it's a bit taller, and of course your knees fit in under the tank quite significantly, which just gives it a very different feel overall. Added to that, of course, is the fact that they've raised the bars a little bit. They've put a new front end on it. It's got LED lighting all round. That's the headlight, the indicators. It's got some daytime running lights as well. It's got the full package, which really does make it look like a very futuristic machine and gives a lot better throw of light as well for your general riding duties, particularly if you're commuting at night. As far as the overall specification, we're not actually seeing any real difference as far as the performance from the outgoing model. That YZF R3 power plant has remained unchanged, and you know, it's a really beautiful power plant. One of the things that I've said about the R3, and which is very true of course about the MT-03 because it's the same power plant and in many ways a very similar bike, is the fact that this power plant is the kind of power plant that I would say is for the person who likes the idea of an inline 4 and wants a learner machine that's still in that 300cc category. It's a super smooth parallel twin, but it's really got that inline 4 characteristic. It's got a nice slick gearbox, very easy to shift. You are going to be shifting a little bit. I feel like maybe the gearing's been changed a little bit on the MT-03 compared to the R3. It feels a little bit torquier down low, and it does feel like it hasn't got quite the same top end as the R3, but that's certainly not something I'm complaining about. You know, you can do 140, 150 on this with ease, no issues at all. Probably the main area that I really noticed it was when I was going up some hills at speed, and it just didn't have the same pull that the R3 had. And I mean, that's, again, it's not a criticism. I think the MT-03 is more meant to be the daily all-rounder bike, where the R3s are definitely a sportier iteration of that machine. And this does that really well. As far as the overall ride, the bike is very well sorted. It's got these super wide bars, it's got really sharp handling. I jumped off the R15 onto the MT-03 and I kind of expected, you know, this to feel a little bit slow in the handling side of things, but that wasn't the case at all. But it's got a very sensitive and responsive front end, and I'd say the handling is really telepathic because at the end of the day, you don't even really need to think about it. At the times I was putting some little inputs in through the bars, a little input goes a long way, which of course, because you've got those nice wide and very flat bars, is going to be part of the naked bike package, which makes it very easy to maneuver, very nimble, a very easy thing to ride, again, through traffic for your everyday riding, where you might not have a lot of room and things like that. So the MT-03 really is catered to those people who are going to be spending just, you know, almost every day on the bike kind of thing and don't want the fairings. And of course, they've done a great job with the styling. The air intakes are really cool. It's got a nice kind of bit of resonance to that exhaust without being overly loud, which I really like. The comfort is really good. That's one area which I say really stands above, particularly Kawasaki Z400 and the Ninja 400. They've got a really hard seat, where the MT-03 has got a nice, comfortable seat, and I'm quite impressed by that. I do find the reach to the ground is very low, so it's going to be really inviting for shorter riders, or particularly I would probably say women as well. I will say it's quite interesting with the gearing on the MT-03. I found myself knocking it up into 4th or 5th for a lot of my just around town riding, which is a bit unusual for me. I am quite a lazy rider, but I do like to keep it in the meat of the torque. But I think that speaks to how readily available that torque is down low in the rev range on the MT-03, that you can really knock it up a couple of gears. You can take off in second gear and it'll do that no problems at all. If you're a little bit worried about, you know, giving it too much throttle input as a new rider. However, it's super smooth all round. The super smooth fueling is a real strong point, and as I said, that really linear nature, that really rev happy nature is really what makes the MT-03 a fun thing to ride. It is noticeably down on torque compared to say the Z400 or the Ninja 400, which is what my wife's got. And while I will say that's something that you'd notice if you're jumping from one bike to the other, the things to keep in mind is the refinement of this is really nice. It doesn't have that closing throttle issue that the Ninja has. It's got a really beautiful power plant. It's all refinement, where the Ninja 400's a little bit more torque and a little bit more punch and rougher around the edges. And what I really like about this is that the new upside down forks and the new shock really add a lot more refinement to the suspension side of things, which matches the engine refinement. And I would even go as far as to say the braking level refinement, because on these it's not the most powerful braking system, but there's good power there. You know, there's plenty of power to bring the bike up to a halt. It is super light at 168 kilos, and it's a super light, super good value machine with great brakes, not overly powerful brakes, a beautiful engine, not overly powerful engine, but probably the most refined engine, I'd say, in the category. It's got a beautiful broad spread of power and torque without going over the top, and it's going to be a beautiful tactile thing to ride on a daily basis while still being, you know, a lot of fun. And I'd go so far as to say as being, you know, a proper true Streetfighter styled machine. And obviously the headlight and the looks come into it, but you know, the actual performance on offer is great as well. The suspension is so controlled. It's such a big step up from the old system. As I said, at first I thought that I was jumping onto a bike which just got the R3 suspension, and I thought it might be a little bit stiff. It might be a little bit harsh for the everyday road riding. However, as I got out onto the open road and I pushed it harder and I spent more time around town, I actually found that this suspension setup, I would say, is better even than the R3 for my everyday riding, because at the end of the day, it's comfortable, it's got great feedback, you really feel the road beautifully, but you don't get all of those harsh bumps and kind of undulations on the road being transferred back to you as a rider, and that becoming an uncomfortable situation. I really like how this bike feels, and it feels like the MT-10. The MT-10 obviously is a big step up because it's got very expensive suspension on it. However, the MT-03 really carries that same feel, that nice supple controlled suspension setup, just the way it's really quite a telepathic handler, the way it feels, the kind of feedback it gives you as the rider. There's a real family resemblance between the MT-10 and the MT-03, which is really saying something, because I would definitely say the MT-07's got a little bit of resemblance to the MT-10. The MT-09, not so much really at all. They might look a little bit similar, but kind of the way they feel and the way they develop power is quite different. Whereas I'd say the MT-03 is the closest you're going to get to the MT-10. As a learner rider, when you're looking at getting into that MT range from Yamaha. As far as things that the MT-03 doesn't have, it does not have a slipper clutch. I wouldn't mind the slipper clutch, but again, the engine braking is nice and smooth, and you're not going to be getting much engine lockup unless you were really doing something wrong. So probably not a huge concern. As I said, the exhaust has a nice bit of resonance to it, but it's not the nicest looking thing, and it's not super loud either. The wheels really stand out. They're really bright and they give the bike a lot of punch. It's got that nice grey paint scheme on it, which I love. That's the same kind of paint scheme you get on the MT-10. It's just got an LCD display. It's got a shift indicator. It's got a gear indicator, which are nice things to see, but you're not getting traction control. You are getting ABS. No real advanced electronic system, but at the same time, I don't feel like Yamaha need a ride-by-wire system on this bike at this point in time. It's just totally unnecessary. It's a little bit of a shame that they've mounted the horn here right under the headlight. It is so ugly and detracts, because that headlight is a small kind of setup. It really detracts from the overall look of the bike, and I find that a real shame. Apart from that, there's not much to complain about. I was getting a little bit of glare on the dash, which made it hard to see my speed, but not too much of a concern. Good comfort, beautiful styling, a great overall machine. There's no adjustable levers. There's good vision through those mirrors. It's just a great starter bike and one I'd highly recommend checking out, particularly if you're on the shorter side or if you're looking for that naked bike theme and you want something super refined. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to sub, hit that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, stay safe out there and thanks for watching.